Valorant's wide array of unique and interesting abilities are Riot's take on the traditional utility system presented in the tactical shooter genre. With each agent in the game presenting their very own strategies and possibilities, Valorant is spoiled by an ever-growing and ever-changing metagame with new plans of attack and defense being crafted every day. Today's video is dedicated to teaching you the fundamental concept behind the abilities in Valorant and how understanding their proper use cases and scenarios will hopefully take your play to the next level. Quick reminder that only 4% of my audience is subscribed, so if you could hit the button, that would help a ton. On to the video. So to get everyone on the same page, let's start with the absolute baseline. What are Valorant's abilities and why do we need to understand them? Let's put it this way. Valorant's ability system is literally the only thing that makes it any different than any other shooter out there. The game's full of different maps and has a wide array of weapons, but it's not anything that we haven't already seen before. The game draws a ton of inspiration from Counter-Strike, and it doesn't really try to hide that either. Gunplay in Valorant is also simpler for a tactical shooter by nature of its design to make room for its coveted ability system. So even without knowing anything about what the abilities can do in the first place, you can probably guess that Riot's going to make them important. This translates into the kind of mindset that you probably need to have with your abilities, and it's pretty simple. Use them. This sounds really stupid when I say it like this, but it is literally the most common issue when I see with players. They hold onto their utility for far too long to the point where they're just not using it in rounds, or they die before they get a chance to have an impact with them. This can even simplify itself to the point where players will exclusively think about their gunplay, which puts them at a disadvantage against any player that actually decides to use an ability. Put it this way, abilities are literally the most broken thing you and your teammates can use to contribute to a round. They're cheap, high-impact tools that allow you to do things that you wouldn't be able to with just a gun. Of course, Valorant has decently simple gunplay, which allows players to have more capability in gunfights, but the reality is that many rounds can and will be decided on who takes the most initiative on their ability usage. Don't even worry about spending the money on abilities in the game as well. They're insanely economical and for good reason. They're intended to be purchased almost every single round, and you should use them willingly as you need them. It is almost always worth it to have a cheaper gun and a full set of abilities when compared to just having a better gun by itself. Alright, so now that we understand why we need to use our abilities, we can now move on to what our abilities are and how we can use them in different contexts. I won't go into insane amounts of detail over every single agent because there's an extreme amount of depth and interactions that can revolve that sort of thing, but I will classify some ability examples and how they can be used as huge amounts of leverage for you in your games. We can generally break down abilities in Valorant into flashes, smokes, mollies, and everything else. Most agents in the game right now will have some sort of standard utility you may find in other shooters, but more often than not have unique twists on them. In addition to that, Valorant's agent system gives Riot the luxury of pushing the limits and giving characters things that you would never see in another game. Learning proper usage of utility here will actually translate into general game sense and FPS games in general, so it's definitely worth your time investment as well. The most basic of the ability types here is probably the smoke. Different agents in the game will differentiate smokes with either different ways of deploying them or having them come in different shapes, but they're all different versions of what is essentially the same tool. In a vacuum, smokes are meant to block vision. Therefore, good applications of smokes would be those where blocking off said vision would generate an advantage for your team. A classic example of this is using it when you're playing defense and you block off an entrance to a site. Players might do that because they just know it's the meta thing to do, but let's try to break it down a little bit more. The reason for blocking off said vision is because it essentially prevents them from coming through that area, with some exceptions. By blocking off that area of vision, enemies won't be able to push that area without being seen by you first, meaning that this angle now favors you. If you've ever wondered why teams can't just push through smokes with brute force, it's because of how much Valorant favors the player that's holding an angle. Inversely, however, smokes can be used offensively to either provide cover for a team that's trying to push an area or to block off areas that defenders may be watching from. Without that, it's extremely hard to push onto a site as easily. You should always be willing to place a smoke down when you play for a site, and you should always use your smokes no matter the situation. They essentially block off areas of the map that you are scared of and allow your team to get so much more space. Angles being held by players can easily be stopped by smokes, and its power cannot be underestimated. Now onto flashes. Flashes in Valorant are interesting because agents' flashes will behave differently, but we can simplify it to just what they're meant to do. Flashes generally provide a brief period of absolute vision where a player or team can be guaranteed to get through whatever area the flash is being sent towards. Flashes can be outplayed, but mostly in the sense that you'll be able to look away before the flash actually connects, in which case the flash is technically able to do its job anyway. You'll also have to adjust how flashes are used based on the agent that you're playing and the strength of your flash in your situation. Most flashes in the game are standardized full blinds like Breach, Yoru, and Phoenix, where anyone looking at the flash at the time it procs has their whole screen blocked in vision. Reyna's Eye, for example, is a little bit different in which it blocks vision if you're looking at it only, and Omen's Flash is more of a really strong near sight than an actual flash. The main goal of these flashes though stays the same, but in closer situations or where areas with a lot of cover, Reyna's and Omen's flashes may be a little bit less relevant. But adapted to your situation, flashes are still great short-term tools for being able to break into sites. If you want to get onto a site, it's very good practice to just be burning whatever flashes you have to make sure you'll be able to get onto the site and secure a plant. One thing to note with flashes as well is that they're great tools for pushing through smokes. Enemy defenders of a site will be forced to have to look away or do something to respond to your flash, so you'll have plenty of time to check every potentially dangerous area as well. Flashes can even be used defensively in post-plant or general defensive scenarios to allow a defending player to peek an angle. Lastly, moving on to Molly type abilities, these are ones that provide damage over time to a specific area, usually having some sort of targeting mechanism behind it as well. Think Viper's Snakebite, Phoenix's Hot Hands, Killjoy's Remote Mollies, Brimstone's Molly, things of this nature. The main use case for these abilities are to provide an absolute way to clear a certain area. Molly type abilities in Valorant deal a ton of damage, so I would imagine that it would be in your best interest to try and live against them. Therefore, we can use this information to clear off certain corners that players may be holding, or use sick lineups and such to defend the bomb in a post-plant scenario. Mollies can also be used defensively to stop enemy pushes in their tracks. In addition to these three core types, Valorant has so many unique ways of providing vision or contextual cues to players in different situations, and that's the main thing that gives the game this fresh feeling that others don't have. Things like Recon Arrow, Raze's Roomba, and Asha's entire kit bring interesting ways to both provide and use utility to gain the kinds of information that we would never see from a tactical shooter in the past. Although I won't go into details about every single person's kit because that's a little bit too much depth there, we can use the same kind of mindset of just sitting back and you thinking about the purpose of said utility is, and then making sure to not hesitate when we do opt to use it. As long as you keep this in mind, you can learn the most optimal way to use that utility with enough reps and then stay steady on the path to improvement. Other than that though, hope this video helps you out a little bit, and I will catch you in the next one. Stay fresh.